At 9:17 p.m. in Brookmere, Virginia, under string lights and a glass ceiling at the Wren Park Conservatory, the toast began and ended in under 30 seconds. The husband lifted his flute. The wife smiled, accepted hers from the server, and turned toward the guests. Cameras along the east trellis went gray at 9:16:51, cycling a frozen view of clinking glassware. At 9:17:09, the wife's knees buckled. She caught the rim of the farm table, dropped the flute, and fell against the black and white dance floor. The toast spilled across the boards and drew a pale arc that stopped at a copper inlay. The room stalled. The husband stepped back and let his own glass hit the floor. The band's keyboard sustained a single note and then cut to silence. Staff moved first. A manager radioed, "Medic," pointed toward the loading hall, and cut a path. A guest lowered the microphone and cleared the riser. The centerpiece on the couple's table, white ranunculus threaded with sprigs of glossy green, leaned into the space where the wife had stood. The east trellis cameras stayed stuck on a loop. The south wall dome cam shook once and pointed, up toward the skylights. At 9:23 p.m., a private ambulance rolled in through the service lane. At 9:31, on the conservatory rotunda's tile, the lead medic called the time. The husband stepped away from the group and held a cuff to his wrist. The caterer secured the champagne station. In the bar prep sink, a torn foil neck sleeve with the winery's crest curled in the water. Within an hour, an anniversary party. Turned to a controlled perimeter, and a bottle that looked intact proved to be the only item no one could account for completely. Brookmere sits 30 miles west of Richmond, a commuter town wrapped around river bends and converted mills. The Wren Park Conservatory anchors the park's north edge, a glass house with a steel frame, tiled rotunda, and a series of trellised bays lined with potted citrus and climbing vines. The Carrs booked it for their 10th anniversary. 200 guests, a plated dinner, and a late string of speeches led by colleagues and family. Daniel Carr co-founded a logistics software firm and moved it through a merger. He kept a low profile, worked from a brick office on Main, and favored tight timelines. Elena Carr ran a small gallery downtown, coordinated artist dinners, and managed a school arts program. Their circle included staff from both worlds, neighbors, and a few old friends, including Tyler Ames, a contractor who handled build-outs at the gallery and appeared often at their house for weekend projects. The conservatory's operations ran on schedule. A floor plan fixed the head table at the center trellis. Bars flanked the rotunda and the west wall. A champagne station stood behind a screen near the service hall door, out of sight of the crowd but 2 steps from the main room. The venues. Cameras fed a rack in a closet off the service hall. The closet locked. On paper, everything that mattered was where it was supposed to be. The day stacked cleanly. At 2:05 p.m., rental trucks offloaded glassware, linens, and risers. At 3:12, the florist staged the head table and stepped back. At 4:20, the bar crew packed the champagne station and iced 2 cases labeled Reserve. At 5:48, the venue manager walked the floor plan with the head server. At 6:13, the Carrs arrived through the rotunda, signed a delivery receipt, and went to the bridal room. At 7:22, the first course hit the tables. At 8:46, the band took a short break. The head server checked the time with the stage manager and signaled the champagne service. At 9:11 p.m., the east trellis cameras recorded a server lifting a tray of 10 flutes. He carried them along a loop through the crowd and returned to the head table. At 9:13, the husband's flute rested near his right hand, and the wife's flute set to his left. At 9:14, a barback in a black apron retrieved a fresh bottle from the champagne station for a refill and cut the foil neck sleeve at the prep sink. The station's second bottle sat with the wire cage twisted but intact. At 9:15, guests stood and lifted glasses. The server topped 3 flutes at the head table. He reached the wife's glass last. At 9:16:47, the east trellis cameras froze. The south dome cam tilted up and stopped. The network log would later show a power cycle to the camera rack at 9:16:45. The toast began. Guests lifted their flutes. The husband's eyes flicked to the rim of the wife's glass once, then tracked back to the crowd. At 9:17:09, the wife's grip failed. Her glass struck the table, bounced, and shattered. The husband stepped back with his own glass still in. Hand, then let it fall. Staff converged. A manager cleared guests to the rotunda. A server pulled the champagne tray back toward the screen. The band dropped out mid-chord. The head server knelt and checked a pulse. A guest in a dark suit rolled his jacket, slid it, under her head and edged back. The immediate aftermath pinned the room to units and markers. The paramedics arrived through the service lane, took the patient to the rotunda tile, and worked in sequence. The caterer closed the champagne station behind the screen and set the remaining bottle in a bus tub. The venue manager unlocked the camera closet and found the rack rebooting. The power bar was on. The DVR showed a login screen. A small jumper cable linking two terminals on the rack's service panel had been moved one position off its default. At 9:31 p.m., the medic called the time. Police taped the service hall and sealed the champagne station behind the screen. Guests moved to the rotunda perimeter. The husband stood by the greenhouse doors with the best man, who handed him a glass of water. The barback who had cut the foil earlier waited by the station with his hands visible. The server who had carried the tray answered basic questions and pointed to the path he had traveled. The first checks were routine. Police collected the broken flute stems from the dance floor and the head table. They collected the bottle in the bus tub and the one still in the station cradle. They took the torn foil sleeve from the prep sink and bagged it. They powered down the DVR and took the drive. They took the trellis cameras offline and pulled the rack. A few guests left early. Most stayed under instruction. The band broke down, in silence. The room cleared gradually. The head table sat with two places intact and one chair tilted. The centerpiece leaned into the empty space. On the table runner, a faint rim mark from a glass chilled a shallow circle. The immediate statements converged on the same details. A toast, a collapse, a short period of confusion, then a controlled response. The outlier was the cameras. They had gone dark at the most visible moment and recovered as soon as the room turned into a scene. The only hard object that tied the moment to a method was a single flute and a bottle that looked like any other. Detective Nora Kim took the case at 10:12 p.m. She split coverage into zones: beverage service, camera rack, head table, and back-of-house access. At the champagne station, she logged two bottles and their states. The bottle in the bus tub was half full. The foil at its neck was cleanly cut. The wire cage on the second bottle was still twisted down. A third bottle sat in a lower bin, unopened. On the prep sink's grate, a torn foil sleeve collected water under a slow-dripping faucet. The sleeve's crimp line carried two faint indentations, not consistent with a factory crimp, small punctures near the lip. At the head table, Kim collected glass fragments from the wife's flute and the husband's dropped glass. She logged the positions relative to a floor grid the crime scene unit taped out across the dance floor. The runner showed a splash arc that overlapped but did not saturate the wife's place setting. The rim imprint on the runner measured a matching diameter to the wife's flute stem. A thin smear along the glass's interior curve showed a faint iridescence under oblique light. The camera rack in the service closet showed a firmware screen. The venue manager provided a login. The last admin session had occurred at 8:59 p.m. The rack's power log recorded a 5-second dropout at 9:16:45, limited to the exterior trellis feed and the south dome, not the interior rotunda camera. The jumper cable had been moved on the service terminal board to bridge the wrong pair. The board housed a warning about service-only configurations. A Torx driver sat on the floor near the rack's base. Its T10 bit matched the panel screws. The manager stated the closet had been locked since 5 p.m. He had the only key card. He opened for the police. He had not opened for staff. Kim checked the venue access log. The service hall doors recorded 3 staff card swipes between 8:40 and 9 to 10 p.m. The camera closet door recorded none until 10:06 p.m. when the manager opened it for police. The Champaign station's screen blocked line of sight, but the service hall's ceiling dome camera would have captured movement, if it had not been among the feeds that dropped at 9:16:45. The medical examiner marked a probable acute cardiac arrhythmia and requested full toxicology. Kim prioritized chain of custody on the bottles and glass. The bus tub bottle went into a cooler, sealed and logged. The intact bottle was bagged and logged. The broken glass went into hard cases. In the bar, prep sink, a drain strainer caught a small object, a stainless micropipette tip with a faint gold tint. The barback said he had not used any tools beyond a foil cutter. He pointed to the foil cutter on the station shelf. It showed no residue. Interviews ran in parallel. The server who had carried the tray stated he topped 3 glasses at the head table from the bus tub bottle. He set the bottle down and lifted the tray. He said he did not return to the table before the collapse. The barback stated he had cut 1 foil sleeve for a fresh bottle at 9:14 and had not poured. He said he had carried the bottle to the station, cradle, and set it down. He had started to wipe the prep sink when the collapse occurred. The husband stated he raised his glass and did not sip. He said he dropped his glass when his wife fell. He said he had gone to the greenhouse doors to clear space as staff worked. Back-of-house access opened a second path. A catering chef reported that at 8:55 p.m., a man in a dark suit and no tie stepped behind the champagne screen, lifted a tray as if to help, and set it down. The chef said he assumed the man was part of the party staff. He remembered a small, black case in the man's hand. The chef described him as the same build as Tyler Ames, a frequent presence at the couple's events. Kim logged the description and the time. She requested the Rotunda camera feed, which remained online during the drop, and pulled frames around 8:55 p.m. The Rotunda feed showed Tyler moving from the West Bar area toward the service hall and slipping behind the screen. The frame held for 4 seconds before the trellis feeds dropped. Toxicology returned early indicators within 24 hours. The residue on the wife's flute glass and the thin smear inside the bowl tested positive for aconitine, a neurotoxin found in monkshood. The concentration was high and localized. The bus tub bottle's sample showed trace contamination consistent with a small volume addition, not a tainted batch. The intact bottle was clean. The pipette tip from the bar drain held an organic residue, matching the glass smear. The torn foil sleeve's puncture marks aligned with a micro-injection through the cork or the meniscus at the neck. Kim walked the supply chain. The florist had not used monkshood in arrangements. The greenhouse attached to the conservatory did not stock it. A local nursery had sold a tray of monkshood seedlings 3 weeks earlier for a private garden. The buyer's card traced to an account used by Tyler Ames. Receipts from a boutique apothecary in a neighboring town listed a tincture of Aconitum napellus sold on a cash basis 2 weeks earlier. The clerk described a man buying for a book club demo, which had not occurred. Device checks added more. The DVR's admin record at 8:59 p.m. showed a login user of Ops. The venue manager said only he used that account. He had not logged in at 8:59. The rack's power log showing a selective 5-second drop pointed to a manual jumper reposition, not a building-wide flicker. The Torx driver at the rack matched a set found in the groom's emergency kit behind, the band riser. The set's T10 slot was empty. The husband said the band borrowed his kit earlier to adjust a stand. The band's lead said they had not used it. The pieces formed a direction: aconitine, a pipette, a punctured foil sleeve, a tray carried to the head table, a barback cutting foil, a server topping glasses, a friend slipping behind a screen, a jumper shifted on the camera rack's service panel, and a husband's emergency toolkit missing a bit that fit the panel. The access and the preparation sat with 2 people close to the couple, Tyler Ames, visible behind the screen, and Daniel Carr, who had both proximity and a locked room that had been altered without an access log. The route to them would run through who handled the glass and who controlled the blind spot. The first twist undercut the assumption of a single plan. The aconitine concentration in the wife's flute was localized to the interior film, not mixed evenly throughout the glass. The bus tub bottle held trace levels, but not enough to dose. A full pour. This indicated the toxin had been applied directly to the rim or into the poured glass using a small volume delivery, not by tainting the whole bottle. The micro-pipette tip in the bar drain matched that method. The second twist came from what the frozen cameras didn't miss. The rotunda feed, still live, captured reflections in the west bar's brass back panel. Between 9:14 and 9:16 p.m., a reflection showed a man in a dark suit holding a small black atomizer near a flute before setting it on the tray. The atomizer's shape matched a travel perfume sprayer. The server had lifted the tray seconds later. When Kim traced trash pulls from the venue, a black atomizer with a cracked inner vial turned up in a bathroom bin off the service hall. Residue inside tested positive for aconitine. The atomizer's outer shell carried partial prints consistent, with Tyler's right thumb and index finger. The third twist aligned the blind spot. The jumper placement on the rack created a precise 5-second drop on select feeds. That jump required knowledge of the rack and panel. The Torx T10 missing from the husband's kit fit the panel screws. Behind the band riser, under gaffer tape, Kim's team recovered the T10 bit. It bore adhesive and a thin smear of grease matching the rack's terminal block. No print survived on the bit. In the husband's sedan, parked in the service lane, a laminated schematic of the conservatory's AV closet sat in a side pocket. The husband's company had donated tech to the venue 2 years earlier. He knew the rack layout. His calendar showed a walkthrough with the venue manager in the week before the party to confirm uplights. The fourth twist reversed the pour. During rehearsal the previous evening, the photographer had captured a series of staging images at the head table. One frame showed the wife's flute etched with a tiny star near the base, an artist's mark the gallery used to track a blown glass commission. In the event photos from earlier in the evening, that etched flute sat to the wife's left. In frames from the toast, the etched flute sat to the husband's right. The server had not moved it knowingly. The position shift required a swap-in, the seconds before the toast. The fifth twist exposed a second plan. A hotel camera 2 blocks away captured Elena entering a side entrance at 5:06 p.m., 2 days prior, and leaving at 7:41 p.m. with Tyler. The footage established their connection, but the shock came from a different direction. An inventory ticket from the conservatory showed the husband authorized a service test of the camera rack at 3:00 p.m. the afternoon of the party. The test log listed a 5-second drop on trellis feeds. The venue manager provided the email. It came from Daniel's address with a vendor signature block. He said he assumed it was routine prep. The sixth twist revealed a rehearsal movement. A band drone used for establishing shots. Over the glasshouse ran practice passes the night before. A clip showed Daniel kneeling at the head table, adjusting the runner and the place settings, then placing the etched flute at his right-hand side. He stood and matched settings to a printed seating card he checked twice. No one flagged. The shift because it looked like normal staging before a photo test. The seventh twist joined method and opportunity. The atomizer indicated a delivery controlled by Tyler, delivered near the champagne screen. The camera blind spot and the flute swap indicated a counter prepared by Daniel. The toxin was applied to the glass that Daniel ensured ended up at Elena's place. The bus tub bottle's trace contamination came from residue introduced as the atomizer spritzed and mist settled. The camera drop covered the swap. The Torx bit and jumper aligned the timing. The eighth twist sat in a gift bag under the head table. Among cards and wrapped boxes, a small black case contained a micro-syringe rig wrapped in tissue. The rig matched a kit sold online to hobbyists. The tissue carried Tyler's DNA. In Daniel's tuxedo pocket, when booked later, officers found a folded pocket card with the rack's service jumper positions highlighted. The final twist defined intent through sequence. Messages recovered from a shared gallery tablet contained a hidden folder of photographs. 2 people in a hotel room, one of them Elena, the other Tyler. The husband's office printer log showed a print job the morning of the party. A copy of the conservatory's service manual page for the camera rack. The venue manager confirmed Daniel had asked about walk test procedures in the days before. A florist assistant recalled Daniel asking to place the centerpiece slightly off-center to open space at the right-hand place setting, a position that created a clean lane for a quick swap or pour. Together, the evidence showed a plan, and a counterplan running on the same track. Tyler delivered the toxin to the glass he believed would be in Daniel's hand during the toast. Daniel arranged a 5-second camera blind, shifted the etched flute to his own place, then swapped positions before the server finished topping off. Elena lifted the glass intended for Daniel. The hidden affair did not push a single actor forward. It set 2 in motion. One prepared a delivery behind a screen with an atomizer and a microsyringe. The other prepared the room, the camera rack, and the placement of a single etched flute. The toast brought them to the same point. The outcome followed the last small move at the table. Arrests came in sequence. Police arrested Tyler Ames on charges of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and tampering with a consumer product. Hours later, they arrested Daniel Carr on charges of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and tampering with evidence. The state's theory framed 2 intersecting plans: an attempted poisoning of Daniel executed by Tyler and a lethal counteraction executed by Daniel that redirected the poison to Elena. Pre-trial motions set the limits. Tyler's defense moved to suppress the atomizer and microsyringe kit, arguing chain of custody gaps. The court admitted both, finding logs intact. Daniel's defense moved to exclude the camera rack evidence as unfairly prejudicial and technical. The court allowed it, limited to timing and the physical jumper relocation. Both defenses sought to sever trials. The court kept them joined due to overlapping facts and shared acts. The prosecution presented a timeline focused on hands and objects. They began with the champagne station, the torn foil sleeve with punctures, the pipette tip in the drain, the residuum of aconitine on the wife's flute. They showed the rotunda reflection of Tyler using the atomizer near a flute behind the screen. They entered receipts for monkshood seedlings and a tincture sale. They introduced the microsyringe kit found in a gift bag with tissue carrying Tyler's DNA. They shifted to the room. The etched flute moved from Elena's side at rehearsal to Daniel's at the toast. The band drone footage showing Daniel repositioning. The etched flute the night before. The centerpiece offset. The 5-second camera drop engineered through a jumper relocation. The missing T10 bit from Daniel's kit recovered under tape behind the riser. A venue schematic from Daniel's car and an email arranging a service test at 3:00 p.m. established knowledge and opportunity. The medical examiner linked the dose and mechanism. A localized application consistent with a rim spray or a small volume pipette deposit, rapidly absorbed, consistent with collapse within a minute. A toxicologist explained aconitine's properties and how a sprayer could deliver enough toxin without flavor detectable in a toast swallow. A digital tech explained the DVR logs and how a service jumper could drop only select feeds for 5 seconds. A glass expert identified the etched mark on the flute and a microabrasion at its base that matched the head table's wood at the new position, indicating a recent move. The defense strategies diverged. Tyler's counsel argued entrapment by circumstances and denied intent to kill, suggesting a stupid prank gone wrong, and challenged identity in the reflection. Daniel's counsel argued lack of causation, stating Daniel neither poured nor sprayed any toxin, and that the swap could have been an accident in a crowded service moment. He framed the jumper alteration as a benign, scheduled test unrelated to the toast. The state returned to the combined intent shown by actions. Tyler acquired aconitine sources, the sprayer, and a microsyringe kit, and placed an atomized toxin on a flute moments before a targeted toast while stepping behind staff. Screens. Daniel arranged a blind spot, rehearsed glass placement, moved the etched flute to his side, and swapped it back at the last second while the cameras froze. Each action alone suggested planning. Together, they explained why the toxin delivered. By one man ended up in the hand of a different target. Jury deliberations took 3 days. They requested to re-watch the rotunda reflection clip and the rehearsal drone footage. They asked for the technician's explanation of the jumper. They examined the etched flute under court supervision. Verdicts returned. Guilty of first degree. Murder and conspiracy for Tyler Ames. Guilty of first-degree murder and tampering with evidence for Daniel Carr. Guilty of conspiracy reduced to a lesser degree for Daniel due to the absence of direct proof of prior agreement with Tyler on the poisoning. Sentencing placed Tyler at life with the possibility of parole after 40 years. Daniel received life with the possibility of parole after 40 years on murder and a concurrent term for tampering. Restitution orders covered venue losses and law enforcement costs. An impact statement from the gallery staff described the abrupt end to a schedule that had been planned for months. The conservatory replaced its camera system and locked its service closets behind audit-logged readers. The champagne station moved permanently to a visible position away from screens. The party ended with a perimeter and labels on glass. The method was small: a microspray on a flute rim, a pipette's drop at a pour, a 5-second blind on a rack, and the effect was decisive. The investigation did not build on speculation about feelings. It built on movement: a man stepping behind a screen, a foil sleeve punctured at the edge, a jumper slid one position on a terminal block, an etched flute shifted from one side to the other, a centerpiece moved half an inch to open a lane across the table, a glass set down for a count of 3 and then lifted to a mouth that was not the intended one. The courtroom translated those moves into counts. 2 plans converged at a toast. One man brought the toxin into the room and set it on a rim. The other arranged the room so the rim reached a different hand. The hidden affair did not resolve in an argument. It resolved in a sequence that left no space for chance once it began. The venue rewired its racks, moved its stations, and logged every open door. The conservatory returned to weddings and fundraisers with the trellis cameras replaced and the closet alarms set to alert on any jumper moved out of line. Consider the triggers that shifted suspicion into proof. Residue localized on a single flute, a pipette tip at a prep sink, a reflection in a brass panel, a jumper misbridged for 5 seconds, a Torx bit-taped behind a riser, a florist's centerpiece offset, a drone clip showing a hand on a glass the night before, a punctured foil sleeve, and a sprayer in a bathroom bin. An anniversary toast should last a minute. In Brookmere, it lasted long enough for 2 plans to meet. The outcome followed the last quiet adjustment at the table.